Last spring I dropped $2 on a knob of ginger from a regular grocery store. Not a nursery, not a seed catalog, the produce aisle. 8 months later I pulled almost 40 pounds of fresh ginger out of 3 fabric grow bags on my back fence. Here's the thing. The reason most people don't know you can do this is that the U.S. spice trade spent most of the 20th century making ginger feel like something exotic, something that has to be shipped in from somewhere else. It doesn't. It grows in a 5-gallon bag on a patio in Sacramento. Stick around to the end, because I'll share the one watering trick Gloria taught me that nearly doubled my yield in a single season. Here's the thing. The reason ginger feels exotic to most Americans isn't because of the plant. It's because of the marketing. After World War II, the U.S. spice trade got very, very good at one specific job, making spices feel like they belonged somewhere else. McCormick & Co. consolidated the American spice market through the late 1940s and 1950s, and the American Spice Trade Association leaned hard into what they called origin marketing. Ginger was Jamaican. Ginger was Chinese. Ginger came from somewhere far away on a ship. That message ran through catalog imagery, restaurant menus, and the back of every spice jar in the country for about 50 years. Now, before we go further, I want to be honest with you. I bought that framing for a long time too. I figured ginger was a tropical thing. You needed a greenhouse, a jungle, somebody else's climate. I was wrong. And here's the anchoring detail most people don't know. Hawaii had a thriving commercial ginger industry through the middle of the 20th century. Real acreage, real harvests, real domestic supply. Through the 1960s and 70s, that industry got systematically priced out by cheaper imports from Jamaica, China, and India. The U.S. didn't lose the ability to grow ginger. It lost the economics of growing it commercially. Those are very different things, and the second one got quietly turned into the first one in the public mind. Meanwhile, the average American household spends somewhere between $40 and $60 a year on fresh ginger at $4 to $7 a pound at the grocery store. That same household could spend $2 one time on an organic knob and never buy ginger again. I'm telling you this from a small house in Midtown Sacramento, Zone 9B, with 3 fabric grow bags on a back fence. Not a greenhouse. Not a tropical anything. A patio. Ginger is exotic by branding, not by botany. Once you see the difference, you can't unsee it. So let me show you exactly how this works. Laris 1. The basic existence of this thing. Any organic ginger rhizome from any grocery store in America can become a plant. That's the whole opening move. You walk into the produce aisle, you find the ginger bin, and you pick out a knob that looks alive. Plump, firm, not shriveled, not dried out at the cut ends. What you're really looking for are the eye buds. Those little pointed nubs that look almost like the eyes on a potato. They're usually a paler color, sometimes a soft greenish or pinkish tint, sticking up off the surface of the rhizome. 1 eye is enough, 2 or 3 is better. If you flip a knob over and it looks smooth and tight everywhere with no bumps, put it back. That one's been sitting too long, or it's been dosed with something that's keeping it dormant. Pick up a few until you find one with visible eye activity. Now, here is the part that matters more than anything else in this section. The ginger has to be organic, not kind of organic, not loose organic, certified organic, with the sticker. Here's why. Conventional ginger is almost always treated with a sprout inhibitor, and the most common one is a chemical called chlorprofam. Chlorprofam's job is to keep the ginger looking nice on a grocery shelf for weeks without sending up shoots, because once it sprouts, it loses retail value. Functionally, that chemical does exactly what its name suggests. It inhibits the sprouts. So you take that knob home, you put it in soil, and it just sits there. Maybe it rots. Maybe it does nothing. You blame yourself. You decide ginger doesn't grow in your zone. Organic ginger is not allowed to be treated with that compound, which means the eye buds are still alive and ready to wake up the second they get warm soil and water. I did this the wrong way the first time. I bought conventional. I waited 6 weeks. I got nothing. $2 wasted. One piece of false confirmation that ginger doesn't work here. If you only remember one thing from this section, remember that the sprout inhibitor on conventional ginger is doing exactly what it was designed to do. Keeping you from growing it. And that's the kind of small, boring, Unremarkable detail that almost never makes it into a glossy spice hazel conversation about where ginger comes from. Layer 2. How this actually works. Because once you understand the biology, the method makes sense and you stop being intimidated by it. Here's the thing most folks don't realize. Ginger isn't a root. It looks like a root. It sits in the root section of the produce aisle, and almost every cookbook in America calls it ginger root. Botanically, it's a rhizome. A rhizome is a modified underground stem that grows sideways instead of down. That's a small distinction that has huge practical consequences. Roots only absorb. Stems can do everything stems do, including push out new shoots, store energy, multiply, and spread laterally. When you plant a piece of ginger, you are not planting a root and hoping a plant comes out of it. You are planting a piece of stem that already knows how to be a plant. Ginger belongs to a family called Zingiberaceae. Same family as turmeric, cardamom, galangal. They're all perennial herbs, which is the second piece of biology nobody bothers to mention. Perennial means it comes back. It doesn't have to be replanted from seed every spring like a tomato. The rhizome is the plant's bank account, and as long as you leave a little of it in the soil, or you save a little and replant it, it just keeps going. That alone changes the math on what ginger costs you, because in the standard American framing, ginger is something you buy by the ounce. In reality, ginger is something you start once. The other myth I want to break right here is the tropical heat myth. People hear ginger and they picture monsoon jungles and 95-degree days. Ginger does not need that. What ginger actually needs is warm soil, somewhere in the 70 to 85-degree Fahrenheit range, indirect light rather than blazing direct sun all day, and a wet then dry watering pattern. That's it. The reason containers are actually superior to in-ground growing in most of the US is exactly this: soil temperature. A black or dark fabric grow bag sitting on a sunny patio will hold soil temperature in that ideal window for months at a time, even in places where the in-ground soil would never get there. You can move a bag. You can shade it in the worst of August. You can drag it onto a sunny step in May. You cannot do any of that with a row of dirt. The container isn't a compromise. The container is the upgrade. And that's the kind of inversion you don't tend to hear in any spice trade conversation about where ginger belongs. Layer 3. The full method, with the actual numbers I use. Once you've got your organic knob in hand, step 1 is a 24-hour soak in lukewarm water. Not hot, not ice cold. About the temperature you'd run a sink to wash dishes. Drop the whole knob in a bowl, leave it on the counter, walk away. The soak does two things. It rehydrates the rhizome, which is usually dried out a bit on the shelf, and it washes off any residual surface coating. After 24 hours, pull it out and pat it dry. Next, break or cut it into pieces. You're aiming for sections about 1.5 inches to 2 inches long, and every section needs at least one visible eye. If a knob has 3 good eye clusters, that's 3 pieces. If it only has 1, that's 1 piece. Don't force it into smaller chunks just to get more bags going, because a piece without an eye is just a piece of ginger. Use your hands where you can. Ginger has natural breakpoints along the fingers. Where you do need a knife, make a clean cut and then set the pieces out on a paper towel on the counter for 48 hours. This is the calloused step. The cut surfaces will dry out, scab over, and harden a little. That callus is what keeps the piece from rotting once it goes into wet soil. Skip this step and you can lose half your pieces to soft rot in the first 2 weeks. I learned that one the hard way. While the pieces are calloused, mix your soil. 5-gallon fabric grow bags are what I use, 3 of them lined up along the south fence. The recipe is 60% compost, 30% coconut coir, 10% perlite. The compost is the food. The coir holds moisture without going soggy. The perlite keeps the mix from packing down hard around the rhizomes as they spread. Fill each bag a little more than halfway. Lay your calloused pieces on the surface, eye buds pointing up at the sky, then cover them with about 2 inches of the same mix. 2 inches deep, eye up. Water them in gently. Place the bags somewhere they'll get a few hours of morning sun and shade in the hottest part of the afternoon. A patio, a back fence, a balcony rail. The east or southeast facing spot is usually ideal in most of the US. Now you wait, and you hill. Ginger rhizomes grow laterally. They spread sideways under the surface, sending up green shoots as they go. Twice during the season, when you start seeing the new shoots multiply and the surface of the soil getting crowded, you top the bag up with another inch or two of the same compost core perlite mix. That's hilling the same way you hill potatoes. Each layer of fresh mix gives the rhizome more lateral space to spread into. The first hilling is usually around month 3, the second around month 5. At about 8 months, the green tops will start to yellow and flop. That's the plant telling you it's done storing energy and is ready to be harvested. Tip the bag onto a tarp, and you'll find a tangled mat of fresh ginger fingers under the soil. 3 bags in my backyard in Sacramento, last season, 12 to 14 pounds per bag. Roughly 40 pounds total off $2 of starter material. And the boring reason this number doesn't appear in mainstream gardening media is that nobody in the import distribution business has any reason to publish it. Lot of 4. The forever part. This is what changes the whole calculation, and it's the part that almost never gets included in the rare articles where home ginger does come up. When you harvest, you do not eat all 40 pounds. You set aside 4 to 6 finger pieces from your harvest, clean, firm, with at least 1 eye each, and that becomes next year's planting stock. Wrap those finger pieces in a handful of slightly damp sphagnum moss. Drop them in a paper bag and put the bag in a crisper drawer in your fridge. Slightly damp, not wet. The sphagnum keeps the humidity stable enough that the pieces don't dry out, and the paper bag breathes enough that they don't mold. Check on them once a month through the winter. In early spring, pull them out, soak them for 24 hours like you did the original, callus them, and plant them in fresh bags. That's the forever loop. $2 in, year 1. Year 2 and beyond, the only input is the soil mix, and you can make that for almost nothing if you're composting at home. Gloria has been running this exact cycle on her San Francisco apartment balcony for years. She has a single ginger plant in a clay container that's now in its 3rd year. The rhizome mass underneath has gotten so dense she has to divide it every spring, and she gives the divisions to her granddaughter May to take to school. 3 years on a balcony, in a city where everyone's been told ginger is a tropical specialty crop. The plant doesn't know it's not supposed to be there. And that's the kind of small, repeating, real-life proof that you simply do not encounter in any commercial ginger conversation. Because commercial ginger lives or dies on the assumption that you will keep buying it. Which brings me to a quick pause. Because if what you've just heard is starting to land, if you're thinking about that fence, that balcony, that patio, there's one more piece I want to put in your hands before we get into the rest. Now, if what I'm telling you about ginger is starting to land, if you're already looking around the kitchen wondering what else you've been overpaying for, I want to put one more thing in your hands. The full container playbook I use lives in my book, The 30-Day Kitchen Scrap Garden Protocol. It's $17 at backyardbuddybooks.com. Chapter 4 is called Container Gardening on Zero Budget, and it's the chapter that walks through this exact fabric grow bag system applied to ginger, sweet potatoes, and the $3 potato experiment I run every year, with diagrams showing the soil layering, drainage, and hilling stages. If you're watching this on a TV, go grab your phone and point it at the QR code on the screen. If you're already on a phone or laptop, the link's right in the description. Take a second. No rush, I'll be right here when you get back. This was written for folks with no yard and no budget, so if that's you, that's the chapter. All right, so back to the bigger question, because I think it's the one that bothers people the most once they realize how easy ginger actually is. Why doesn't anyone tell you this? Why isn't this on the back of the bag at the grocery store? And the answer is mostly money, with a side of marketing. The U.S. fresh ginger market is somewhere around $1.8 billion a year. That's a real number. Now, run the math on what happens if even 5% of households start growing their own ginger in a 5-gallon bag on a patio. That's roughly a $90 million hit to import distributors and the consolidated spice trade. $90 million is a lot of reason to keep ginger feeling exotic. The cultural piece is just as deliberate. Pull up a McCormick catalog from the 1950s and look at how they drew ginger. Sailing ships. Far-off ports. Hand-lettered labels with words like Jamaican and imported. Restaurant menus picked up the same language. Imported ginger root. Fresh ginger from the East. and American cookbooks slowly stopped treating ginger as something a person grew. Because here's the part most people don't know. In the 1800s, you'd find ginger plants growing on southern porches across the Gulf Coast. It was a yard crop. People kept a clump going by the back step the way they kept mint. That practice didn't disappear because the plant stopped working. It disappeared because a generation later the catalog told everybody it had to come on a boat. Now, I want to be honest, because the audience here is smart and you'll see right through me if I'm not. There's a real counter-argument. Large-scale commercial ginger genuinely is more efficient in tropical climates. A field in Sichuan or a plot in Jamaica is going to outproduce a Sacramento back fence per acre every time. I'm not arguing with that. What I'm telling you is that home scale was never the competition in the first place. Home scale was excluded from the conversation. The cost to you isn't just the $40 to $60 a year your household pays for ginger you could grow for two. It's the autonomy of knowing you can produce a warming spice on your own patio without anyone's permission. That's the part the catalog never wanted you to figure out. Exotic by branding, not by botany. Which brings me to the watering trick I promised you, because this is the one that takes the whole thing from a fun experiment to a serious harvest. My first ginger season, I watered those bags the way I water tomatoes. Even, daily, steady. I pulled about 7 pounds per bag, and I was thrilled with that. Then I took a knob over to Gloria's apartment in San Francisco that fall, and when I told her how I'd been watering, she actually laughed at me. Not mean. Just the way a retired school teacher laughs when a kid's been doing long division the long way for a week. She calls her method the thirsty cycle. Here's how it works. You let the top 2 inches of the grow bag dry out completely. In Sacramento summer that takes about 5 to 7 days. The bag will feel light when you lift it. Then once a week, you give it a single slow 20-minute deep soak, and instead of plain hose water, you use rice rinse water, that cloudy starchy water you pour off when you rinse uncooked rice before cooking. Most people dump it down the drain. Don't. Save it in a jar on the counter. That's your ginger feed. 2 things are happening at once. First, the wet then dry pattern mimics the monsoon dry cycle of ginger's native Southeast Asian habitat. The plant evolved to store hard against a dry phase, and when you give it that cue, it puts more energy down into the rhizome. Second, the rice starch feeds the soil microbes living in your bag, and those microbes turn around and make nutrients more available to the plant. The first season I switched, my per bag yield jumped from about 7 pounds to about 13. Same bags, same soil. Just a different rhythm. Gloria has a saying about it. Water like the rain forgets, then remembers. That's her, exactly. And it's the kind of inherited gardener wisdom that never made it into a single commercial growing manual. Because commercial ginger doesn't grow in containers, so nobody bothered to write it down. Now, before I let you go, if any of this is making you think about what else you could grow once and harvest from for years, the chapter I'd point you to next is Chapter 9. Called The Long Game, Perennials and Self-Sustaining Systems. That's the chapter built around Gloria's 20-year balcony system, the one she's been quietly running in San Francisco the whole time. Same book, same place, backyardbuddybooks.com, $17. It's honestly the guide I wish I'd had 10 years ago when I was killing tomato plants in a Portland apartment, thinking I just didn't have the gene for this. If you're on the TV, scan that QR code with your phone. If you're already on a phone, the link is in the description right under this video. Go ahead and pull it up. Take your time. I'm not going anywhere. So there it is. A $2 knob from a regular grocery store, 3 fabric bags on a back fence, and roughly 40 pounds of fresh ginger that can keep producing for you year after year if you save a few finger pieces every fall. You don't need a tropical climate. You don't need a yard. And you do not need permission from the spice aisle to grow your own warming spice. The next one I want to tackle on this channel is turmeric. Same family, same suppression story, even higher yields per bag. And almost nobody is talking about it the way it deserves. So grab 1 organic knob this week. Just 1. Soak it tonight, callus it this weekend, and you'll be in the ground before you've thought too hard about it. Drop a note in the comments and let me know which variety you found at your store. I read them all. Until next time, keep growing your own food, my friend.